Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome you to City Vision's 2002 Part 2. Now, I know it's 2003, but what we're doing here today is highlighting the accomplishments of the 2002 graduating class from the Master of Fine Arts in Media Arts Production at the City College. These are the award-winning filmmakers from last year's graduating class. Today, we're going to be looking at 3 fictional pieces. First, we're going to see Kemi, directed by a Nigerian-American director who calls himself Amo. It's the story of what happens to an African au pair when she comes to the United States. Second, we'll be looking at I Am by Yuka Okura, a Japanese student who took her degree at the City College. And it's the story of a marriage in crisis. And finally, we're going to be looking at Sensitive, a story about immigration that takes place in Jackson Heights here in New York. And that's directed by Gustavo Mercado. Unfortunately, Amo and Yuka are no longer in New York City, but the award-winning filmmaker Gustavo Mercado will be here to chat with us about Sensitive. Now, take this opportunity to enjoy these 3 fascinating works by young filmmakers. Welcome back to City Cinematheque. I hope you've enjoyed the opportunity to see the work of 3 talented young filmmakers, Kemi by Amo, I Am by Yuka Okura, and Sensitive by Gustavo Mercado. It's our pleasure to have Gustavo with us today to chat about his film. As Gustavo well knows, your 2 other classmates are off other places, California and Japan to be specific, but we're very privileged to have you here. Welcome to City Cinematheque, Gustavo.
Thank you for having me.
I want us to talk about, the origin of the story and the structuring of this film, the production, all of those things. But also, I'd like for us to perhaps begin at the beginning, as it were, about how you came to decide to be a filmmaker, and also perhaps to talk a little bit about your life, because you're Uruguayan American. You're formed by both cultures. You're bilingual, bicultural, at least, etc. So where did this interest in the movies sort of come from? Is this something came early, late, from yourself, from the family?
It's something that really started very early in my life. I think it tracing its origins would lead me back to my father, who was a very big lover of movies, of world cinema, and he was a passionate lover of neorealist films.
Okay.
He thought that Bicycle Thieves and Umberto D were like masterpieces. So not only he was a lover of movies, but he had a very concrete idea of what films should be like. He hated the Hollywood movies that took place inside studios. He liked on-location shooting. He was very instinctively knowledgeable about what he preferred in films. So that was something that at the beginning became almost a ritual in my family, to go to the movie theater at least once a week to see whatever was playing there.
Okay. And was that here? Was that in Montevideo? Or?
Actually, that was in Mexico. I spent, my father is actually from Bolivia, but he spent most of his life in Argentina and Uruguay. My mom is from Uruguay. I was born in Uruguay, but we spent a great deal of time in Mexico. So that actually took place in Mexico for a while.
Okay. And so then you're a graduate of City University of New York at Hunter College, where you're now doing teaching. You've returned to Hunter College to teach. Did you enter into Hunter College knowing that you were going to take the path towards filmmaking, or is that one of the things that you discovered, as many people discover during their university educations, what kind of profession they're going to pursue?
No, I think that way before I even entered college, I always had a passion for film. As I was growing up as a teenager, when I was going to high school, I would take any opportunity I had to actually ditch school and go to the movie theater. Actually, in Mexico, there was a movie theater that played only European films, and it was incredibly cheap. And they always play like movies beginning 1 p.m. So I would rush out of school just to make it to see the latest Bender film or the Fassbinder film,
right,
whatever was playing. So it was something that I think entering college, that was a passion that I definitely wanted to pursue. And it was never a moment of hesitation or thinking that I could be doing something else, something that obviously could be more profitable, that I could get a job that could actually pay something.
So that is one of the things that I think, in all fairness, film professors try to impress upon students, is that it really is a field in which you should be doing it if you should be doing it. That is, if you have a pressing internal need to express a particular vision, but also to pursue it in this particular medium, because despite the fact that Entertainment Tonight or whatever will come out with all these astounding numbers, about, well, there's, $75 million in box office for this or that, or something will come along like the Blair Witch Project, in which there's a kind of Cinderella myth attached to it, that, oh, these kids only did $50,000 and now they're all millionaires, blah, 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 blah. That's not really the reality of this particular profession or this particular art form. I mean, it's something that people have to work in for a very long time, and they have to really wish to work in, because the rewards are like that of most professions, not easy to come by. Now, did you start actually filmmaking, and that may even be with an old camcorder or whatever, before college, or were you primarily just interested in absorbing cinema?
Before I started actual film studies in college, I did just absorb cinema. I mean, I would go out of my way to rent whatever I could when the videotape became available. But I really didn't start shooting anything till I was in college, till I took the film courses that you had to take. I just didn't feel I was ready. There was a lot of things that I wanted to say, but I knew that I didn't have the grammar yet to be able to express them correctly, or at least to be able to be faithful to what I really wanted to say. So my experimentation started really when I took film courses in college.
Okay. Now, actually, did you? I'm just curious. Did you complete high school here and then go on to you went to Hunter College, as I've said, or actually did you make the transition from high school in, say, Mexico and then arriving in the United States and going to university here?
I actually took my GED here, so I did complete the high school in Mexico City, but coming here I just took the GED, and then I had to actually work in a bodega, the night shift from 11 to 7 in the morning, but eventually, I saved enough money where I was able to attend college and pursue my dream.
Well, since at this point you have both your undergraduate degree, your terminal graduate degree in your chosen profession, and the film that people have just seen, they would not know, did win Showtime Network's National Latino Short Film Competition, has been screened on Showtime. I'd say you've turned things around, Gustavo, and since you're also now a college professor yourself, teaching at Hunter College. So these are good things. This is a good tribute to what accessibility of education can mean for people who take that education and what it can offer seriously. Let's go to this actual film itself. When did you have the initial idea for the film? Was that something that came out of needing to plan a project for graduate school, or was this something that came from another place?
No, I actually had, and I always keep like a little notebook full of templates for stories. Whenever I encounter some particular aspect of a story, whether it's in the newspapers or something that I hear, or I might be in the subway, which was the case with Sensitive. Okay. And I was actually very impressed at how people in the area where Sensitive was shot, which is 82nd Street and Roosevelt Avenue, were completely so immersed with their lives, with their daily lives, that they had learned to completely ignore the horrendous noise of the subway running, on their heads pretty much every 2 minutes.
That's right.
So that pretty much caught my attention. What can lead people to accept this kind of environment. So that was one of many ideas that I had in a little notebook that I keep, and every time I find something interesting, I write it down immediately before I forget it, and I put it in the notebook. So in doing Sensitive, was one idea that I felt that in a way could be expressed within the means that I had at my disposal in making my thesis film, and that also had something interesting to say.
Right, right. Well, it is, I should say, to our audience who's not been through the experience, some may have been, of getting a Master of Fine Arts degree or doing a kind of thesis project, which this originally, of course, was, is that, of course, when one is, you had to submit this to the faculty for its acceptance as a thesis project, and like all film projects, it is part of that balance of, okay, is this a story worth telling, but also is this a story worth telling that can be done in the scope, in the range of resources available to the filmmaker. And while I think this is a very distinguished story in its storytelling, one of the things that allowed that to happen is that you limited the range so very carefully to a limited range of characters, as well as to the geographic zone. Everything is set up so well. How shall I put this? How did you go about, well, let's just take it very simply. How did you first of all go about casting for the film? Getting because every character in this film seems right, I should say. You've achieved that effect, that the cop is a cop, you know? Our protagonist is the woman who we would find in that office, although well, you tell us who she is.
Well, actually, I was very fortunate to get her to play the part. Her name is Rosario Sagrab. She actually is a professional actor in Mexico. She actually was in a film called The Garden of Eden by a famous Mexican filmmaker, Maria Novaro, who also did Danzón. So I was just shocked when she showed up at the audition, an audition that we prepare as part of the thesis project. We basically got all of the thesis students together, and we pulled our resources, and we set up an audition. We put an ad, and she was one of the people that showed up. And immediately she caught my eye because she was exactly the right person that I had imagined for this film. One of the intentions that I wanted to be able to pull in making this film was that I wanted the people not to look like idealized versions of unfortunately what a lot of times gets shown as Latino culture. But I wanted to find people that did not fit necessarily the mainstream stereotype, but actually look like they belong in that area, like you said. A lot of times what happens when I watch Latino films is that sometimes they pick these beautiful, idealized people for the main characters, and in the background they usually have like the people who don't look like that. And my attention always focuses in the people in the background, the places in the background. So that was the intention in doing Sensitive, is actually put the focus in those people, the people that usually are in the background, and put them in the forefront. So that was that's Rosario. The rest of the people are actually non-actors that I found that I thought would be great for the film. That of course, we went through a process of rehearsal, but again, because of the limits that I had on my resources, I scaled their performances and what was needed of them, so that I wouldn't be asking, a monologue or soliloquy from them. And I think it worked out okay.
Oh no, I think so. I think so as well. Let's talk a little bit more about that planning process. There are different directors prepare films on different scales in different ways. I mean, there's the phase called pre-production. One of the myths about particularly low-budget film production, that kind of thing, is that in a certain sense it's freer because of the low budget. But there's a way in which that's really not true, because you have to use all of your resources as smartly and efficiently as possible. The the shot design of this film. Talk to us a little bit about, because this is a very well crafted film in terms of that. Are you the kind of person who likes to storyboard beforehand?
Yes, absolutely. Like you said, it's always a balancing act. I mean, whether you have a very low budget film or whether you're working in a multi-million-dollar production, even in those cases, you really don't have money to burn unnecessarily. Right. So it's always a balancing act between what you really want to show and what you're able to show, or what you're able to pull off. In the case of Sensitive, because of the limited resources that I had at that time, I had to be very careful in what I was going to show, how the story was going to be told, and that also translated into what kind of shots I was going to use, and that was also going to be translated also in the editing process. With Sensitive, I think I had just seen Vive l'Amour by Taiwanese director Simon Liang, and at that time it impressed me so much, and I love that kind of throwback to an almost idealized new wave, a reinterpretation of the new wave cinema of France, that I think that also I saw that as a style that would fit this film very well. Right. One of the things that I wanted to do was to make, not only present the story of the characters, but actually make the environment a character in the story.
Absolutely.
So that is something that, from my perspective, immediately influences the editing style that you're going to use. Because where the Hollywood, let's say, style tells you to cut when the character leaves the frame, for instance, in Sensitive, there are many instances where the character leaves the frame, but the camera stays there, almost retaining some kind of ethnographic quality, giving importance to the place. That also translated into how the sound design was going to be accomplished, whether the sounds were going to be just background noises that add atmosphere, or they were going to be sometimes interrupting what would be the narrative thread of the story by deviating attention away from the dialogue and actually taking over a little bit the focus of the story. So these are all decisions that affected both the way I was going to tell the story, but also in a way complemented the fact that I didn't have 3 cameras and 60 people in the crew and a caterer or anything like that.
Right. Well, no. Now, I happen to also be a great admirer of the film you've named, Vive l'Amour, by Simon Liang. And I must say that until you told me this, I had not made that connection. But as soon as you reveal the connection, it makes a great deal of sense, because of the way in which you like to think in images, and you like to think clearly in, also, how shall I put it, in a kind of block of material. Well, we're very closely allied with this woman, and we were looking when she's looking. You use a lot of optical point of view shots to get that identification with her, but we're also interested in the overall environment in the film, the way she has to find the story. Nobody else is seeing the story that she's seeing, and you've created, I think, so artfully, this notion of why don't people see the story? Because there's all of these other distractions going on. It's so lively, and people are sort of staying in their own little tunnels, of experience. And she finds this story that's out. That's out on the street. The point I wanted to come back to is I'm so interested in the fact that you're not only making this sort of stylistic connection between a filmmaker that you admired, found some of the ways in which he was doing things that you could adapt, but for those people who haven't seen Vive l'Amour, I just want to point out to them that it's a highly urban film. It's about a dense urban environment, so that the whole notion of you choosing something that's Chinese, but it's going from a densely populated and largely immigrant place on its own terms, like Taiwan, over to a place like the extraordinary demographics of Jackson Heights, right here in New York. So,
and interestingly enough, Simon Liang also deals with issues of social displacement and alienation, which just seems to be like some sort of weird crisscrossing of both form and content, just finding the right medium to complement each other perfectly.
Absolutely the case. Now, what kinds of issues did you have during the production of the film of the film itself? Is there anything? The common question is there anything in the film that surprises you now because it's there, because it wasn't part of pre-production, and that your film was reshaped in some way by production? What's the relationship between the film you had in your head and the film we've seen today?
In some ways, the linearity of the story that I had constructed initially when I wrote the screenplay and when I storyboarded the film changed a lot in the process of editing. However, the tone and the atmosphere that I wanted to imprint in the film actually became truer to that idea during the process of editing, which is something that I was really surprised with. Another thing that happened is that I wanted to be able to capture a lot of outside shots without getting people actually looking into the camera, without getting them, making them a part of the environment, so that they don't make it obvious that unveiling the apparatus, as it were. So I had prepared to shoot with a lot of zoom lenses so that I could be, a block away or across the street, et cetera, et cetera. But in some cases, I wasn't able to do that. I had to shoot with some lenses that forced me to have the camera relatively close to the character. And almost as a, let's say, confirmation of the premise of the film, one of the premises of the film, people walk by the camera completely ignoring it, and they basically follow their routines. So there are some shots where they might be in a couple of seconds, 25 people walking in front of the camera, and they are actually walking, 2 feet away from the camera, and they're not paying attention to that. They are following their daily routines, minding their own business. And in some shots, the magic is that they don't know what I'm shooting at. They don't know that the characters in my film, the actors, they don't know who the actors are. They basically meld into the environment, and the people around them don't know what's being shot. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things in the film, that the story fitted so well the environment that it just melded, and people didn't know. There were the few people that actually did try to find out what was going on, they had a hard time figuring out who was the actor and what was it that I was shooting, which was very interesting.
Well, there's also this way in which the film duplicates your conditions of production. What I mean by that is that she's out there, her eyes are like a camera, trying to find what the story is on this young boy that she's gotten interested in. And there's a way in which your camera itself, I mean, not just when it's her eyes, but you as a filmmaker are saying, wait a minute, stop the flow here. There are stories here. Each one of these people passing by has some kind of story attached to them, but nobody's telling their stories to one another.
Exactly. That is. I mean, you're making me so happy by saying that, because that is exactly one of the things that I wanted to propose with the film. Right. That we're only scratching the surface. That not all stories are about orphans that find out that they are rich in real life, or maids that become models or something like that. That everybody's story is different, that we might see them, walking by us in their banality, but in reality, everybody's story is important. Everybody's life is full of agony and pain and misery and happiness. And in this particular case, in 82nd Street and Roosevelt Avenue, those things become so ignored because of the environment. That's another thing. The environment seems to somehow put a mantle over everything, so that people cease to be people and they become just additions to the geography of the place, and not people who use the place. They become so affected by the environment that they forget themselves. They just know that they have to go from A to B, and that's it.
Well, there's also an aspect of the film that I find interesting. While this film is by no means, a kind of tract about anything, because we're deeply attached to the individuals that we meet. This is a film that makes a pretty strong commentary about class, and particularly how immigrants fit into the class structure of the United States. And we don't have so many stories told about that. That there's all of these stories that happen in the lives of this working class immigrants, but we have a kind of statistical bias towards telling stories higher up on the class scale. Or if we're down at this level, it has to be melodramatic and criminally driven.
Yes, unfortunately, that is that seems to be the case for most films that deal with this kind of situation. Yes, I wanted to not to really instill a polemic in my film, but I wanted to present it, to make sure that it's there, that if people are inquisitive enough when watching the film, they might draw their own conclusions and they might ask the right questions. In Sensitive, there's a lot of sequences and shots that almost demand that the audience put two and two together or ask the question, why did she do this? You know, what was really the intention of doing this? Why is she looking at the subway? Why the woman doesn't help her, you know, when the mother is being harassed by the cops, which actually the cops are not bad in this movie. They're just doing their job. They're looking out for the kid. So in a way, it forces the audience to make those connections and say, like, well, who's at fault if everybody's doing the right thing? The woman working at the immigration office, she's actually going out of her way to help the immigrant.
Absolutely correct.
The immigrant lady is just trying to survive. The kid is trying to help the mother, and the cop is just doing his job. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, and yet it all works against them.
Yeah, no. It's a fascinating point. Let's just go back to some of the work and to the child. I mean, you're working with a professional actress of considerable experience from Mexico. Were there any challenges in working with the child?
Obviously, they always, that's a paradigm that they always say, never work with children or with animals, because they'll either steal the show or they'll make it impossible for you to work. So yeah, of course it was, I actually anticipated that it would be difficult to work with a child, especially somebody who's like my actor is not really an actor, never acted before. So that was worked out by actually, knowing that a kid at that age, usually they have a very short attention span, so that I could only get a few seconds of actual acting in the way that I wanted. And of course, if you pay attention to the film, you see that most of the shots involving the kid, the camera is really far away, so that he doesn't become self-conscious that he's being shot. Okay. And of course, having a professional actor in the form of Rosario Sagrav allowed me to really shorten my time, my rehearsal time with her, and gave me more time to really concentrate on the people who were not professional actors. Teaching them not exactly how to act, but just making them understand that it was just that what they were doing should be exactly the way they do it every day. Right. That I didn't want them to give them line readings or telling them how to move or anything. I explained the situation to them, and I wanted to just let them do it the way they would do it.
Okay. We only have about a minute left, so I want to tell the audience one thing that they should know, that your film did win the Showtime Network's National Competition of Latino Shorts. Sensitive has been screened multiple times on Showtime, but with that award came the privilege of a grant so you would make a second short film. You're now in post-production on that. It should be screened next autumn. That's autumn of 2003 on Showtime. In 10 to 15 seconds, give us a little snapshot of that. What's that film about?
It's a story about a man who unwittingly gets involved in a love triangle. Now, while at the surface this might seem to be very banal, there's a lot of things happening under the surface, which is something that I wanted to do with Sensitive. Have a superficial story, but also a lot of subtextual activity.
Do you have a title for it yet?
The tentative title is Vesper Time.
Okay. We're going to have to end with our recommendation for people to be watching for what we think will be Vesper Time, but let's just say the next short film by Gustavo Mercado. I want to thank you for joining us here for part 2 of City Vision's 2002, highlighting the award-winning work of graduates from the City College. I hope that you join us again for City Cinematheque when we look at work from all kinds of different places, but we think of great value, the things that should be brought out of the archives and brought to you. Gustavo, thank you for joining us today. I look forward to having you with another film.
Likewise.
Here. Great. And I hope that you join us once again, but thanks for joining us today in any case. Bye-bye for now.